So one of the oldest debates within the Smite community has been about removing game modes, the benefits and potential drawbacks of doing so, and if Titan were to remove any, which one or ones should be on the chopping block. So today I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the issue, as well as a more objective look at why Titan may want to remove or keep certain game modes within Smite, as well as your guys' thoughts from voting in the poll earlier on. So for me, I think we can categorise game modes into 4 sections of importance to the game and of importance to Titan as the developer and HiRez as the publisher. Those would be, in order of removal risk, basically impossible, aka I would eat my own shoe with a knife and fork if Titan ever removed any of these game modes. Highly unlikely, I'm not willing to wager my shoe on these ones, but I still think they're very unlikely to ever be removed. Unlikely? Still not talking like they will be removed, but at this point there's a small chance that these game modes will get the sack. And finally, possible. Any game modes in this category I think are legitimately worth considering for removal and that they may be removed in the future. It's still not confirmed or even likely, but definitely possible. So of course this is my own opinion, but I'm also basing it on genuine statistics from HiRez as well as your guys' opinions, and I think I've come to a pretty reasonable conclusion. So in the basically impossible category, we have Conquest, Joust, and Arena. So these game modes are in this category for a few reasons. The primary one being they are the 3 most popular game queues by a long shot. Using this graph of player count directly from HiRez, we can clearly see that Arena, Joust, and Conquest are far above the competition. Even Conquest in 3rd place is a good deal clear of 4th place being Assault. And if you add on ranked Conquest to the total, then Conquest as an aggregate game mode would storm ahead of any other mode than of course the other 2 flagships of Arena and Joust. Since for Joust we could also add on the ranked player base into an aggregate. In fact, if you total up ranked and normal Joust into one queue, it would actually be more popular than Arena here. However, it's also important to note that this is a graph for match count and not player count, and given Joust matches have 6 players and Arena and Conquest matches have 10 players, the actual order for total game mode popularity in terms of player count would be Arena, Conquest, Joust. These 3 game modes are also very unique and distinct from each other, meaning if any of them were removed, likelihood is the players dedicated to that game mode would quit the game instead of migrating to another mode. Take me as an example. I play a vast majority Conquest, and I think if HiRez were to, for whatever reason, remove Conquest from Smite, I would probably quit rather than assimilate into Joust or Arena or something. So that's another reason that these 3 game modes are near impossible to remove at this point. It would dent the player base significantly even if you lost just half of the player counts for any of these 3 modes, as they're the clear frontrunners for player count. Conquest and Joust also have it going for them that they support the only ranked modes for the entire game, and while you can make an argument that Smite is quite casual compared to other MOBAs, it doesn't seem likely that Titan would delete the 2 game modes that actually support the 3 ranked player bases. I mean, you could argue that deleting Joust doesn't necessarily delete Duel, but come on, do you really think Titan will remove Joust from the game but keep Duel? I think not. Okay, so now you get how I'm going about this, let's move on to the highly unlikely category. So here I have 2 very different but equally unlikely to be removed game modes. Assault and Duel. Yes, I aggregated ranked Joust and Conquest into one queue with the casual mode, but that's because aside from picks and bans, they're basically the same game mode. Duel takes place on the same map as Joust, but I think anyone arguing that Duel is the same game mode as Joust needs to get their brain cells back. So Assault is the 4th most popular mode, even though it drifts quite a lot behind the top 3. In my personal opinion, that's not enough to completely avoid removal for the game mode, but given Assault is both iconic to MOBAs, and also one of the most unique ways to play with its own item meta and random gods, I think it's highly unlikely that we see Assault removed at any time. It's most likely always going to be there as a chill mode to wind down with, in my opinion. I think anyone can enjoy Assault regardless of if they're a Conquest main, or an Arena main, or a Joust main, so I doubt it's going to be removed anytime soon. As for Duel, similar logic applies to that as well. It's extremely unique, and most likely if Duel was ever to be removed, its player base would quit Smite instead of moving to another game mode, since it is the only 1v1 game mode we have. And while Duel is easily the least popular game mode that's not a practice or tutorial queue, it has a very small but very dedicated fanbase with a few content creators dedicated entirely to it. I think we're more likely to see casual Duel become a thing than ranked Duel be removed, personally. Which brings us on to the next category, unlikely to be removed game modes. Here we have Clash and Match of the Day. So these are modes that, as the title category says, are unlikely to be removed, but are within the realm of possibility, I think. But there are definitely a lot of reasons why Titan wouldn't want to remove them as well. So Match of the Day is a weird one because it's not one specific game mode, and so it's quite hard to analyse effectively. On one day it might get almost no players at all, and on another day it might be Omnipotence or All Out Assault and it draws a ton of players. Since this data we have from HiRez was collected only over 7 days, it's probably not reliable to judge the actual game mode popularity based on this. It's possible that those 7 days were all really bad match of the days and it drew less players than normal, and it's also possible there was a week straight of bomb-ass match of the days and this data represents a high point for the queue. We just can't tell. If we had data for a month or even longer, I'd be more confident in this match count bar, but as is, I'm not comfortable relying on it for such a volatile game queue. However, I will say that Match of the Day has the uniqueness going for it. You aren't going to find Lokis with perma-stealth or Odins with cage up every 10 seconds anywhere else but here. As for Clash, this one is more easily predicted. While it is the 5th most popular game type, it's significantly behind Assault here, and given they're both 5v5 modes, we can rely on these bars for population count for these two modes. And that's just with Assault. Comparing Clash player count to the top 3 of Conquest, Arena and Joust if we aggregate ranked modes, it shows that it's very far removed 5th place here. Clash also isn't that unique in my personal opinion. I'm sure I'll get some dislikes and rage comments from angry Clash mains, but if you compare it to Conquest, Arena, Assault, Duel, it's clearly not as unique as any of those game modes, which is mostly why it's in this category for me. I think the player base of Clash would more willingly assimilate into other game queues than the player base of Conquest or Arena or Duel would, for example. Yes, it has Apophis and the 2-lane system, but that alone isn't enough to make it class as unique for me. Titan, however, have shown that they're committed to Clash in a lot of ways, which makes me put it not lower on the list. A huge visual and gameplay overhaul, a new boss enemy, as well as smaller changes like switching buff camps and moving them around, changing how Phoenix works, makes me think that Titan are committed to Clash. But in my mind, this category is still labelled unlikely and I don't think Clash will be removed. I'm just saying there are more arguments to remove Clash than there are, for example, for Assault or Duel in the category above. But also less than our final game mode category below, which I'm sure you've all guessed by now. Yeah, the only game mode in the possible removal category is Siege. For me, this is sad because I used to really love Siege, but its slow popularity, lack of attention by HiRez and stigma made me not enjoy it as much. Right off the bat, Siege has a very low player count, only being rivaled in terms of game modes by Ranked Duel. However, unlike Ranked Duel, Titan have repeatedly shown a lack of attention for Siege and have left it in a sort of limbo. Also, unlike Duel, Siege doesn't have a particularly dedicated player base and also doesn't have the content creator influence that Duel has through people like Rexy or Mast. As far as I know, Siege hasn't received any meaningful updates for years by Titan, which is why I think it's more than likely the game mode that's on the chopping block if Titan decide that removing game modes is the way to go, which I'm not saying is certain, just possible. It's almost a vicious cycle with Siege. Not many people play the mode, so the matchmaking is bad and it gets no attention from Titan. The lack of attention and bad matchmaking makes more people stay away from the mode for fear of bad matchmaking and becoming invested in a mode that Titan clearly don't care about enough, which just spirals. That's the main reason I think Siege might be up for the slaughter in the coming year or two of Smite. Every other game mode, even Clash and Duel and Match of the Day, receives some updates. Match of the Day is always getting a new type of game mode, Clash received the buff camp changes this season, and Duel recently got the Titan health changes to improve the mode. Siege has gotten nothing. Not just this season, but every season pretty much since its release. Combine this lack of attention from HiRez with the already low player counts, and Siege seems like the only obvious choice for a game mode removal, especially since its player base would likely assimilate into Clash, Joust, or maybe even Conquest. It wouldn't be the same, but I imagine a lot of people would stick around, whereas removing a mode like Duel, for example, would cause a lot of dedicated Duel mains to quit outright. And we're not talking about some revolutionary idea that's never been done before. For those of you who haven't been playing Smite for 6 years, so most of you, there was a game mode called Domination back in the day, which of course was the basis for the Celestial Domination Adventure mode that we had a while back. That used to be a mainstay game mode of Smite back in the day. I'm talking about before Clash, Siege and all that became a thing. From what I could gather, Domination was removed due to it being incredibly new player unfriendly and unintuitive when coming over to it from other game modes due to the capture system. Not necessarily a low player count, but it proves Titan are, or at least were, willing to remove game modes. In terms of my personal opinion, Siege seems like the only viable option to remove right now. Every other game mode has been around too long and has had time to amass a dedicated player base that makes it very hard to remove safely without losing players. That's the unfortunate truth of the situation. While it would certainly improve matchmaking in the main 3 modes to just remove everything else outright, you'd also do a lot of damage to the game's overall player count, as some portion of the players of those certain game modes will just rage quit Smite rather than playing anything else. Some will come into other game modes, sure, but not all, and it's about finding a balance between the two that's overall healthier for the game. And in my opinion, based on the evidence of low player count, and most importantly the lack of any attention and improvements to the mode, Siege is probably not long for this world. But that's my opinion. Let's also take a look at the poll I sent out to you guys a few days ago and the results of that to get a more generalised view of the average player. Or at least of the average viewer of my channel. So by far the most popular option among you guys from this poll is to not remove any game modes and keep Smite the way it is currently, at about 43% of you guys. I can see why a lot of people will go for this one. It's the safe option, which is why I think HiRez have gone for this option so far with not removing any game modes. There's not going to be a huge backlash from removing modes, but you do potentially miss out on the benefits of removing game modes as well. They won't be removing a game mode just for the sake of it. The second prominent option is of course to remove Siege. If you aggregate the remove Siege and the remove Siege and Clash options, then approximately 40% of you guys would want to see Siege removed. For reasons I've outlined earlier, I think removing Siege will be ultimately beneficial for the game, and if I had to make the call at HiRez, then that's what I'd do. Clash actually saw a larger portion of you guys wanting it removed than I thought. 15% or 26% if you include the Siege and Clash category, which is still a pretty big portion of you that want Clash removed. However, it's of course nowhere near the popularity of remove Siege or remove nothing. The final category, which I mainly just threw in there to have it as an option, which was removing more game modes than just Clash and Siege, only reached approximately 3% popularity, which makes sense. As I've detailed earlier in the video, I think removing anything other than Clash or Siege will be problematic for the game. A lot of you guys also left some interesting comments on the post. Some popular ideas I saw were the adding of a 2v2 game mode, with some of you suggesting we remove either Clash or Siege or both to add this 2v2 game mode because it's more unique. I think a lot of people sometimes only have one friend to queue with and don't want to deal with randoms, so a 2v2 mode could potentially be quite fun in my opinion, although it would also likely get quite toxic. Another idea was to remove Siege and or Clash, but add them into the match of the day rotation. I think personally, if they were to be removed, having them back in some way would be nice for nostalgia reasons. You could possibly even just have rotating queues, so for a week Siege is available to play, but then it disappears again for a while. I think keeping some memory of old game modes alive is important, sort of like they did with the Celestial Domination adventure. But hey, I think we all know the best way to go about this would be to put all the game modes in a loot box that you pay $10 to roll and get a random game mode, right guys? Anyway, that's it for this one. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, you nerds.